She was soaking wet, setting down their food while they laughed at her.
I bet it's
He was standing in the
pouring
doorway
out there.
watching every second of it. My name is Andre. I
That
am
will be all,
38 years
thank you.
old. I started SwiftBite, a food delivery platform, in a studio apartment with a laptop and a logistics idea that most people told me was too simple to be valuable. 7 years later, SwiftBite operates in 14 cities, employs over 2,000 people directly, and partners with 12,000 restaurants. I wear good suits to board meetings and say the right things in the right rooms and have become, without entirely meaning to, the kind of man who is insulated from the actual experience of the thing he built. That bothered me more than I let most people know. It started as an internal audit idea. My head of operations, a precise and serious woman named Irina, had presented data showing that driver satisfaction scores had dropped 11 points over the previous 2 quarters. She had theories about why. Compensation structures, app interface friction, customer behavior patterns. All reasonable. All abstract. All the kind of thing that looks clean in a presentation and means something different on the ground. I told her I wanted to understand it from the inside. She told me there were established methods for that. I told her I wanted to do it myself. She looked at me the way Irina always looked at me when she thought I was being impractical, which was a look I had learned to take seriously and occasionally ignore. I spent 3 days training as a standard delivery driver through our own onboarding system, which I went through under a different name. I learned what our drivers learned. I wore the standard SwiftBite jacket, dark navy with the logo on the chest, a cap pulled low, a delivery bag on my back. I looked exactly like every other driver on the platform. I was not recognizable. I had not been in a company photograph in 2 years, and the ones that existed showed me in a suit with different hair. Nobody was going to look at a delivery driver and see the CEO. The first 2 days were educational in the specific way that reality is always more educational than data. I understood, in a way the satisfaction scores had not quite communicated, what it meant to navigate the platform under time pressure with an interface designed by people who had never used it at speed. I understood what it felt like to carry hot food up 6 flights of stairs because a building's elevator was out and the app had no field for that. I understood the particular experience of being invisible in a way that was structural rather than personal. On the 3rd evening it was raining. Not the light kind of rain that is inconvenient. The serious kind that comes sideways and finds every gap in a jacket and turns streets into shallow rivers and makes every minute outside feel longer than it is. I was completing my last delivery of the evening, a corporate order for a late meeting at a high-rise office building near the financial district. The order was large, multiple containers, a full meal for what the ticket said was a team of 7. The building was 32 floors. The meeting was on 29. The elevator was occupied for several minutes, and by the time I reached 29, I had been in the building long enough that the jacket had moved from damp to thoroughly wet. I followed the signs to the conference room. The door was glass, and through it I could see 7 people in suits around a long table, the remains of a working dinner and the energy of people who had been in a room together too long and had moved from professional to loose. I knocked. Someone called out to come in. I opened the door, and a young woman who had been waiting near the entrance took the bags from me and began setting the containers on the table. She was perhaps 28, dark hair up in a loose bun that had come partly undone, wearing a jacket that was wet in the specific pattern of someone who had come from outside recently. She was one of our drivers. I recognized the jacket. She had clearly just arrived herself moments before me with another part of the order. I began setting down the remaining containers on the side table near the door. I kept my cap down. Nobody at the table was paying attention to either of us in the way that people in a room do not pay attention to delivery drivers, which was something I had already learned was one of the specific textures of this job. And then one of the men at the table, mid-30s, the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having questioned whether he belonged in a room, looked at the young woman arranging the containers and said something to the man beside him. Quietly, but not quietly enough. He said, "Can you imagine doing that for a living?" and gestured slightly in her direction. The man beside him smiled. Someone else at the table laughed at something adjacent to it. The woman with the blonde hair near the end of the table covered her mouth. The young woman arranging containers did not look up. Her hands kept moving, setting things down in the right order, straightening napkins, doing the job exactly as it needed to be done. But something in her shoulders changed. A small and specific adjustment that meant she had heard and had decided to continue anyway. I stood at the side table and did not move for a moment. Then one of the other men, encouraged by the first, said something further. He said he had seen her on the app, that she had a rating of 4.6, and someone should tell her that was basically a participation trophy in this city. More laughter. The easy kind that happens when a group has decided something is acceptable. The young woman set down the last container. She straightened up. She looked at the table with a neutral expression that had taken visible effort to construct, and said everything was there and to enjoy their meal. Then she turned toward the door. I stepped slightly aside to let her pass. As she did, I looked at her face properly for the first time. She was not going to cry. It was not that kind of expression. It was the expression of someone who had decided a long time ago that certain things were the cost of the situation she was in, and had made her peace with paying it, and was tired of paying it, and was going to go home and continue anyway. She passed me and went through the glass door, and the door closed behind her. I stood at the side table for another moment. The conversation at the table had moved on to something else. The food was being distributed. Nobody was looking at the delivery driver by the door. I looked at the room. 7 people in suits. A long table. The remnants of a meal that 2 people had carried through rain to a 29th floor. And a joke at the expense of someone who was not there to answer it. I took off my cap. The room did not notice immediately. Then the man who had spoken first looked up, the way you look up when something in a room has shifted without sound. He looked at me. Then he looked more carefully. His expression moved through several stages in approximately 2 seconds. I told them my name. Not the delivery driver name. My name. I told them what I did. I told them I had been working as a driver on our platform for 3 days because I wanted to understand the experience of the people who made the company function. I told them what I had learned, briefly, without drama. Then I told them what I had just watched happen in this room. I said that the young woman who had just carried their food through rain and set it on their table was a single mother. I knew this because I had checked her driver profile before coming upstairs, the basic information visible in our system, and it listed her as having signed up with a note in the personal context field that said preferred evening shifts, childcare constraints. I said she had a 4.6 rating on a platform where the average was 4.4, which was not a participation trophy but was in fact above average by any honest measure. I said I did not know their names yet but that I would by Monday morning. I said that what I did know was that the people who carried things through rain to their meetings were not a punchline and were not beneath their notice and were in fact the reason SwiftByte existed at all, and that any company culture which found amusement in that was not the culture I had spent 7 years building and was not the culture I intended to allow. The room was very quiet. I put my cap back on. I picked up the empty delivery bag. I said to enjoy their meal, that everything was there. Then I walked out. In the hallway, I caught up with the young woman waiting for the elevator. She looked at me, uncertain. I introduced myself properly this time. I told her I had heard what was said in that room and that she should not have had to hear it. I told her it was not acceptable and that it would be addressed. She looked at me for a moment. She said she appreciated that. Then she said, with the particular tiredness of someone who has been tired for a long time, that it was not the first time and probably would not be the last and that she had learned to let things like that land and then keep moving. I asked if she had ever considered a role in operations or logistics coordination. I told her that someone who kept moving through what she kept moving through while maintaining a 4.6 rating had qualities that most people in conference rooms did not. She looked at me with the careful expression of someone deciding whether to believe something. I told her to email Irina on Monday. I said I would let her know she was coming. She nodded slowly. The elevator arrived. We both got in. We rode down 32 floors in a comfortable silence, 2 people in wet jackets, watching the numbers descend. Her name was Natasha. She emailed Irina on Monday. She came in on Wednesday. By the end of that month, she was in a junior operations coordinator role with hours that worked around school pickup and a salary that meant the evening deliveries were a choice rather than a necessity. She still does the occasional delivery on weekends. She says it keeps her honest about what the platform actually feels like. I think that is exactly right. I have kept the SwiftByte jacket. I wear it sometimes when I am in the office late and the building is quiet and I need to remember what the thing I built actually is when nobody important is watching. The most important things almost always happen when nobody important is watching. The question is whether you are paying attention anyway. Whether the people moving through rain to your door are people you see or furniture you look past. Whether the joke at someone's expense costs you anything at all, or whether it costs them everything. Pay attention to who carries things for you. They are not background. They are the whole story.